Okay, let's get going then. I'm going to put the link to the Google Drive that has the outlines that I will mostly go by as we go through these classes. Um, I hope I'm assuming, well, everybody who's here got in okay, uh, as opposed to last week when I made a mess of things. Um, so there might be a couple of new people here, so what I'm just going to repeat a couple of things as I will. This is the second class of the 7 workshops in Qualtrics. Today we're going to go over creating questions because, of course, that's what a survey is all about. If you have any questions or comments, you are welcome to either type them into the chat or just unmute yourself and ask. Whatever you are most comfortable with is perfectly fine with me. I sometimes might go a little fast. If I'm going too fast, please say so. Um, or, if there's just something I'm not being clear about. Uh, everything we do builds on things that we did before, and so if you get lost, it's not going to be good. And again, I apologize. I'm still trying to get over this cough that I've had for like a month now. So I do apologize for that. Uh, before we really get going, are there any questions about anything we talked about last week? Okay, then. I do have last week's recorded. Um, let me. On this page, I'm going to copy into the chat here. And if you scroll down, you'll see this link for workshops. And as I mentioned last week, I'm kind of revamping this series. So especially the first few classes are different. But what I do every year that I do these is as I do the next class, I replaced last year's class. So this was the one we did last week. This one is from last year, and once this is recorded and I get it processed and everything, I will be placing this one and so on and so forth. But all of the classes are linked in here. Are there any other questions? Okay, then. Today we are going to go over creating questions. And Qualtrics has a whole bunch of different ways that you can create questions, and of course, gobs, to use the technical term, uh, ways of manipulating and customizing those questions. So I'm just going to come down here and go to create a new project. And there's all these templates that you can start with. I would suggest looking through these. Demographic poll is something probably most of you will be using parts of, at least. They have stuff from COVID-19 projects, academic stuff, faculty and student satisfaction type things. Most of the time, though, you're going to start from scratch and then you'll still have access to all of these once you've started your survey. So we'll go into get started. Just give it a name. Blank survey project. You can import. We talked a little bit about that last week. You can export and import a QSF file, which is the file type that Qualtrics uses. So if somebody else has a survey that you want to use and they did in Qualtrics, they can export it as a QSF file, email it to you, and then you can import it, and you've already got that survey all completed, and then you can go ahead and customize it as you want. You can copy a survey from an existing project. So if you have an existing survey and you want to modify it for a different purpose, you can start with that. Or you can use a survey from your library. And I'm going to show you the library in a little bit. So we're going to do create project. And as you can see, it starts off with a default question, which is just a multiple choice question, which is probably the most common that you will use. Depending on where you click is what you'll be able to do. If you click up here, you're in the block, and we'll be talking about blocks as we go along here. Or you can click, my cursor goes a little wonky sometimes, click inside the question, and you can see, depending on where you click, is what all your different options are. You can change the question type, multiple choice, text entry, text graphic. This really isn't so much a question as it is, excuse me, I'm sorry, a way for you to just display text, like instructions for your respondents, your consent statement, or other types of graphics that you need or want to show to your respondents. Matrix tables, and as you can see, it gives you some a quick preview of what it's going to look like. Sliders, form fields, good for getting name, address, email, etc. Timing, if you want to time how long people are taking to do parts of your survey. Graphic sliders, you can have them upload files that you will have access to. Drill down is a fairly new type of question, and it's, I guess, the classic example is year, make, and model of car. They have help for this. So you come in here and you click here to add answers, and it will give you all the instructions. You have to upload a CSV file that has all the different, the three drill downs that you're allowed to have. Hotspots, heat maps, meta info really isn't a question, but it's a way of getting things like, as it says here, the operating system, what kind of browser they're using, what web page they came from, CAPTCHA verification. which of course is not accessible. Um, I'm going to go back up here to multiple choice. And as I say, each time you change the type of question, you'll get different options here. Allow one answer, the radio buttons or check boxes. Number of choices is easy. Edit multiple. When you do your questions, you click in here and you can go to the rich content editor and you see all the the usual editing options that you have, size and bold and whatnot. One thing that's a little bit different in Qualtrics is you have this little icon here. It's called Insert Typed Text. You can click on that. You can take information from another survey question, the person's answer. Of course, this is the first question, so there's nothing before that. Embedded data field is something that you do in the survey flow, so we'll be talking about those in a couple of weeks, but that's data that you can create without necessarily having to ask a question. IP, GeoIP, we talked a little bit about this last week. This is based on their IP address. And in particular, if you're using a VPN, then this is not going to be accurate. If you really need to know where the person is, you're best off just flat out asking them rather than using this information. Links to the survey, date and time. The opt-out link is, you see, it's like an unsubscribe link. You can create random numbers. Sometimes that's useful. This is called, this panels field. This is an old name for what is now called a directory and was also called at one time a contact list. So you can see it can take their first name, their last name, their email. Loop and merge we'll be talking about in a couple of weeks. It's a way of asking the same questions, like if you're doing a survey on families, you can ask the parent, how many children do you have? And they say 3. And then you can ask the same sets of questions 3 times for each child. And so, of course, every family has a different number of children. And so it will loop as many times as a parent says they have children. Quotas we'll also be talking about. It's a way of limiting how many people answer or respond to your survey. And all of this information can be added into, as you can see, it did this little code here. Whenever you see these codes, you don't want to mess with them, except when we start doing embedded data. And you'll see you can do lots of things with that. But, it's just a standard editor. There's also a tab strictly for pipe text, right? That we just looked at. Remove formatting is good if you're going to copy and paste from a web page or like a Microsoft Word or some other word processing software. There's often code and things that you don't see as a human being. But when you paste it in here, it does weird things because this is, of course, a web page. Well, you can highlight all of your information, then click remove formatting. As you can see, it took out, the bold. Way over here, it's normal view, which is what you'll likely be using 99.99% of the time. If you want to, you can also look at the HTML view if you're doing things that make that necessary. That will probably be rare. This thing called edit question label. If you're familiar with SPSS or SAS or Stata, kind of things called variable labels. There's a variable name, and then the label, which is like a short description of that variable. By default, Qualtrics will use the first part of the question. But if you have repeated questions that, where the first part is, then all those labels are going to be the same when you download your data. So I can just change that to new question. And now in the Qualtrics reports and SPSS, the label for this will be new question rather than this is a new question. It's not something that the respondents will ever see or need to worry about. It's just for your own purposes in looking at the output later on. The other thing you can do, and this can be quite useful, is if you click on the question number here. By default, Qualtrics will number or label your questions Q1, Q2, Q3 in the order that you create them. And that is when if you download it to Excel, that will be your column header. If you download it to SPSS, that will be the variable name. That might be okay for your purposes. Often you want something a little bit more descriptive because it makes your life easier when you're looking at the columns or at the variables. And so you can call it new. You can call it just about anything you like. I'm going to. This is particularly useful if you are using a published survey or some kind of instrument. It's common in psychology, education, health studies, where you can buy the survey itself, and it often comes with maybe SPSS or SAS or Stata code to analyze that data. Well, that code is going to have its own variable names. And so if you just stick with the default Q1, Q2, at some point, you're either going to have to change all the variable names or edit the code that they provide, which I absolutely positively do not recommend you do. It's too easy to mess it up. But if you just change the variables in here to what they want you to use, then once you download the data, you can just go ahead and run the SPSS or SAS code that comes along with it, with minimal, if any, need to edit the programs, because as I say, you don't want to mess with them. Any questions so far? Okay. Of course, you can also, click to write choice one. That's not normally what you want. You can change it to whatever you like. And as you can see, there's a little drop down here. You can get all kinds of, again, the rich content editor, insert a graphic, exclude from analysis. That's just for Qualtrics reports, is it will not include that particular response in any of the charts or analyses that you can do. Make answer exclusive. You probably don't ever want to use that. More piped text. Display logic, we're going to be going over, I think next week or maybe the week after. And that's just a way of either displaying that particular choice or not, depending on, you know, what you're doing. I'm going to come back to assign to group in a moment, because the next question we're going to create will make it a little more obvious. You can move the question up in the list or down. We're going to look at this again, or you can remove that choice altogether. Allow text entry is good, you know, for when you have one of those, you know, if yes, please explain, or other, please explain. Come over here, and there's some more. You can copy the question if you're doing the same kind of question repeatedly and just need to make a couple of changes here and there. Replace from library, you can replace it from something in your library. We're going to look at that in just a moment. You can add a page break. Usually you would, if you need, you know, the page break is when the person gets to that point in your survey, it will go to the next web page, which will also happen in between blocks. So page break, there's a couple of times you might need or want to use that, but typically you're going to put things in a new block. Preview question is very useful, because now you can preview the question as it's going to look to your respondents. Add note can be useful. This is a note to yourself or any of your collaborators. Your respondents will not see it. So, you know, it can be just be a note to yourself. It could be a way of collaborating on a survey asynchronously with other people. You know, you can have notes back and forth to each other. So as I say, those can be useful. And then of course, delete the question. You can also delete the question over here. Just as kind of a little bit of a preview, there's add requirements, requiring your respondents to answer it, adding validation, you know, to make sure, say they put in a correctly formatted email address. Display and skip logic, carry forward, we're going to do in a couple of weeks. Choice randomization, we'll do even further. Recode values, we're going to talk about in a few minutes. Default choices, that's exactly what it says. If you want to make a particular choice or choices the default, you can choose that. And you can see it's automatically answered. And of course, you can change it. And you can see there's this little icon up here. If you hover over it, it tells you what's going on. You can also add JavaScript to your questions. That's probably going to be very rare that you need to do that. So if you end up in a situation where you think you might, shoot me an email and we'll get together and work on it. So that's your first question. Of course, you're going to have more than one question. You can either add new question, and then you get that list of question types. You can use any, any one that you like. Or you can do import from library. And this can be really useful sometimes because Qualtrics has all these different kinds of surveys and questions already made up for you. So just by way of example, I'm going to come down here to demographics because that's something that pretty much everybody uses at some point. And what's really nice is they have these calendar and date questions, like a date picker. What country you're from, you can click here and you get a preview of. So now you can ask people what country they're from without having to type all this in yourself. Yeah. You can click here and do insert question. It inserts and it has all those questions already done. And you can edit them as well. You're not beholden to whatever they say. We're going to look at this stuff in a moment. What's also very useful, as I mentioned, are these date picker questions. I'm just going to show them to you real quick. Now, this is what this one looks like to you, but when your respondents see it, they're going to get the typical calendar that they can pick and go back and forth with. So that makes your life a lot easier when you want to use dates. These other two, they're just basically drop-down questions. As it says here, note, this question is intelligent about month lengths and leap years. You can set the year range by editing first lines in the JS or JavaScript editor. The easiest way to do that is to just come up here and it says this question has JavaScript, and then click on it. And you get this little box, and then you can change the years right up here. The other question is basically the same kind of thing. When would you might use one versus the other? It really depends. With the calendar type, as you can see, this is how the date will look in your data. And many programs like Excel or SPSS can recognize that as a date and deal with it as a date. These others, you'll get 3 separate columns or 3 separate variables, one for month, one for day, and one for year. And again, it just depends on how you're going to use the data later on. It's not the end of the world if you do one and you maybe should have done the other one, because Excel and SPSS can convert back and forth. So not the end of the world. I am going to move this question to the top of the block because I want to show you something. Actually, at the top of the block, I'm going to move it way up to the top. So you can see I reordered the question, this one question, Q3, as is the default. And now it's new, and then Q1, and then Q2, and Q4. Now, accessibility says that you should be showing the question numbers to your respondents as they go through your survey. Well, the thing is, you've reordered them and now they're out of order, and that's going to be more confusing probably than not having question numbers. So you have a choice. Either don't show question numbers. Of course, the respondents will see Q3 and then they'll see new, because this is what Qualtrics thinks is the question number. You can change this though. Come up to tools, it says auto number questions. And you have basically 3 choices. Sequential, which is just Q1, Q2, Q3. By block, so question 1, block 1, question 1, block 2, etc. And then internal ID. Every single question that you create gets its own ID that Qualtrics assigns to it. I've never seen anybody use these. It might be useful if you're doing an API kind of thing, but otherwise it's really not of much use. You can also add a custom prefix. If you don't like Q, you can call it V or VAR, or as it says, up to 4 characters. This thing, skip export tags that I have defined, this here, new, is what they're referring to as an export tag. Sometimes they call it, here it says auto number questions, question numbering, but now it's an export tag. So if I click this, it will renumber everything except this one. So I'm just going to click apply. And see now it's var1, new, 3, 4, 5. As you can tell, it skipped 2 because this one would have been 2 had I not told it to not change it. Now, of course, here we took this from the library. Sometimes you want, I'm going to go down and add a question. Yeah, still do multiple choice. Sometimes they don't have what you need in the library, but you still have a big long list. So let's say you have, the example I'm about to use is a list of names of United States senators. Well, there's a lot of them. You don't want to have to sit here and click and type in each person's name. What you can do is come over here to this edit multiple and get this little window, and you can just type right into here. And that's a little bit quicker and easier than clicking on each of these choices as you go through. But what you can also do is copy and paste. So here's a big list. I copy and pasted from another website. And copy that. Go in here, paste it, and apply. And boom. It's all done. Makes your life a lot easier. And you can still change whether you want multiple one or more answers, etc. Let's go back up. Use this one. I'm going to show you. Look in the wrong place. Add requirements. You can force the person to answer it, or you can just have a message that says, pretty please, basically. So we'll go to preview. I'm going to undo that. I should have taken it out before. And it says, please answer this question. So now I'm going to answer it. And it goes on. You can also add validation. I'm going to take out that default. And so since this is a multiple select, you can say, how many they have to choose. I'm going to change that to, where to go, form field. All this. Email. And you can, as you can see, I changed this, and now you can do validation here as well. And it has it for each, the field size, short, medium, long, and then validation. So you can say, I want a valid email address in there, phone numbers for different areas, postal codes, dates, numeric text values. So say valid email and go back to preview. It says, please enter a valid email address. And you can see it's got that little star to show that there's, and again, you can do all the neat stuff. All the different kinds of validation you can do on that field. And of course, it will change. What kind of validation you can do is going to change depending on what type of question it is. Now, the thing about validation is whenever you use this kind of logic, it's looking for the validation to pass. Whereas we usually want message displayed to somebody when they're not doing what we want. So I'm just going to say is selected, is not selected, displayed, not displayed, because you might have I'm just gonna, it's just a, I say Benin, which was wrong. I just randomly picked an error message, but it says issue. Was it Andorra I picked? I forget which country I picked. Yes. So I picked the correct country and it moved along. Whenever you do this kind of validation, obviously you need to test it and test it and test it some more. Just, just like really anything else you do in Qualtrics, you want to test things, especially as you keep going along. Especially if you have a long survey, I do not suggest putting all the questions in and then going through and testing. Test as you go along. Make sure that what you've done so far works the way you want it to, because sometimes if there's an issue with question 75, it might be something that's coming back from question 20. And it's not always obvious where the actual issue is. I don't want to say error. It may not be an error. It's just the way you've set things up. So it's important to test as you go along. I'm just going to add another multiple choice because I want to show something. There's this thing that they have called recode values. By default, when you create these responses, Qualtrics is going to in the data that you download to Excel or SPSS, these will be 1, 2, 3, 4, however many you go. That may not be what you want, So you can see I clicked over here on recode values and it shows you. If you download it to SPSS, the actual value in your data table will be 1, and it will create the value label for 2023. But sometimes that's not really the way you want it. You want this actual number. So you can come over here to recode values and change these. Now, when you download it to Excel or SPSS, the actual data in the table will be these numbers here. This can also be useful when you want to, as they call it, flip the scales. So you have, say a Likert scale from agree strongly to disagree strongly. Qualtrics will number those 1 through however many, but you're flipping them back and forth to prevent people from, just clicking through. And so then you need to change those values. And so this can be very convenient for that. Is variable naming. Variable naming is a weird way of calling it because it's not the variable, it's the value. And so if you're familiar with SPSS or Stata, it's what they call a value label. So you can say, I believe that one. And this is just for labeling the output, either in Qualtrics or SPSS. It has nothing to do with these values that are what will actually be analyzed, or these, which is what your respondents will see. This is just for labeling output. See, so it doesn't change as far as your respondents are concerned. But it will make analyzing your data later on much easier. And so it's these kinds of things that I say it's really important that you plan your survey. Don't just go into Qualtrics and start typing questions and whatnot. Really think about what kind of data you need and what format you need it in to be able to do your analyses, your reports, whatever it is you're using this for, so that you don't get all the data back from your excuse me, the respondents, and then find out, oh man, I got to do a whole mess of cleaning up data manipulation to get this the way I actually want it. It's a lot easier to do it here. Let's see. Just going through my notes here. Okay, I think that's everything I wanted to get through today. Are there any questions? Okay, then thank you very much, everyone, and I will see you next week when we will be doing, what's next week? Question and answer customization. So we'll be going through, doing a deeper dive into what we've done today. All right. If you have any questions about anything we've done or anything else, Qualtrics or data or statistics related, just shoot me an email and we can get together and get you going. All right. Thank you, everyone.